Hello everybody, how have you all been lately? This is David and I have some Assassin's Creed 3 gameplay for you. I'm sorry for not uploading the past few days. I live on the East Coast and I was affected by Hurricane Sandy. I didn't have any power and I couldn't game at all. If anybody else has been affected by Hurricane Sandy and has lost power, my best wishes go out to you to recover. You're seeing one of the more enjoyable Desmond gameplay segments, but you don't get to play as him until a little more than 1/3 of the way through. The game starts out really slow. Do you remember Assassin's Creed 1 and how long-winded the cutscenes are? The same thing happens with Assassin's Creed 3. The story doesn't really draw you in until about 1/3 of the way through. At least now you have the option to skip cutscenes if you want. For most of the beginning of the game, you feel like you're on handcuffs. The game doesn't really open up until about halfway through, where you get your homestead as older Connor. At first, you play as Connor's dad, Hamath Kenway, but at least now you have the option to skip cutscenes if you want. In all seriousness, when playing as Hamath Kenway, some of those sequences were the slowest I've ever experienced in any Assassin's Creed game, even slower than Assassin's Creed 1. I played all of the Assassin's Creed games and each of them begins with like a small amount of tutorial, but I don't see why the tutorial for Assassin's Creed 3 has to be halfway through the game. You have to introduce all the new elements slowly, and you also have to find a balance between serving the veteran players and the new players who have picked up Assassin's Creed as their first Assassin's Creed game. On screen right now you're seeing me doing some hunting. That's a new mechanic that has to be introduced to everybody. It's some quick time events with me fighting this bear, but there are deeper hunting mechanics such as setting traps for the animals. But there are a lot of glitches and inconsistencies with the game, and look at this enemy right now. There's a lot of these glitches that occur similarly, and there are also mission related glitches, especially with the eavesdropping. Yes, eavesdropping missions are back. Remember those from Assassin's Creed 1? And yeah, it slows up quite a bit. But the naval battles, which you see on screen right now, are a fantastic addition to the series, and much better than the tower defense mode that was introduced in Assassin's Creed Revelations. Assassin's Creed 2 is definitely my favorite Assassin's Creed, plot-wise, gameplay-wise, everything. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood probably a close second. Assassin's Creed Revelation is definitely my least favorite Assassin's Creed. I didn't think it did a whole lot for the series as a whole. But once the game really gets going, about sequence 4 or so, where you open up as young Connor, the game gets really good and I'm just transfixed to my screen. I like the changes that were made to combat. Combat has been tweaked slightly and it's definitely a lot more reaction based than previous Assassin's Creed games. And you just saw me use a guard as a shield against a firing line. That's my favorite mechanic in terms of combat. You can pull off some really good looking combos and they're not incredibly difficult to do. But your character, in terms of how he fights, is definitely inspired by Benjamin Martin. If you ever saw the movie The Patriot and how Benjamin Martin fights, your character feels just like that. I also like the setting. This time period and this locale, the American colonies during the Revolutionary era, hasn't been really explored much in video games prior. I played Empire Total War for the PC, and that's a real-time strategy game, but it's great to be able to walk among everything. And just seeing the civilians interact and the goings-on around the port cities makes for a really immersive experience. And I actually find myself reading a lot of the Animus database entries that pop up as you explore more of the world. It's just unfortunate that the game takes a while to start up before it actually draws you in. And now you're seeing me run through buildings. This is a cool mechanic that they added. Unfortunately, you can't stay inside the building to hang out. I've tried it before. I've tried just to stay in, but once you go through the door, you have to go out the other side completely. And now you're seeing me run through trees. This is easily my favorite mechanic that they've added. I've talked in length about the other mechanics that I enjoy, but this is hands down my favorite. You first have to find trees that you can actually walk on. That's the hardest part. You also have to take a while to learn the controls, but once I mastered the controls, I found myself just looking for new areas with trees to run on because it's incredibly addicting to me. Improving your homestead is just like improving the cities of previous Assassin's Creeds. You have to recruit settlers, and each settler brings a specific set of skills they can contribute, like they'll be able to build more furniture. Right now, I'm about 2/3 of the way through the game, and I felt the handcuffs were only removed about halfway through, and it's just really unfortunate that it took so long for the game to really get going. I haven't even touched the multiplayer yet, but there's just so much this game has to offer. I just fear that the mechanics that we really wanted to explore were not developed enough. I don't see Assassin's Creed 3 as a short game by any means, but it's just the elements that we wanted to play and the characters that we wanted to play as and the parts of the game that we wanted to experience were just not developed enough from the start. I'm having a blast playing the game right now, but if there's anything to find fault with, it's how inconsistent the game can be at times and how glitchy the mission parameters are. I think Assassin's Creed 3 is ultimately going to be a victim of its own ambition, but nonetheless it's going to be one of the better games that comes out this year.